Right, here we go. Good evening and welcome back to your Monday State of Scottish Football. It is the roundup with myself and Graham Duthie in a weekend that saw two games have 5 goals. Pressure relieved on managers. It's just a surprise that we didn't have a Rangers penalty in there as well, Graham. Happy with your team's efforts this weekend?
Absolutely. 4-1 victory, marching on to Europe on Thursday. Delighted. There were bits of performance that wasn't great, as Robbie mentioned, but a 4-1 victory, 7 points out of 9. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, well, at least you're happy. We've got one of us happy on tonight's episode, and I'm sure those of you that are joining in the episode will let us know your thoughts on the Scottish football action this weekend. And we will start with the champions who steamrolled Kilmarnock this weekend. A 5-star performance in a pretty comfortable 5-0 win, it has to be said. Graham, obviously big delight for Celtic, but from a Kilmarnock point of view, a huge disappointment on the level of performance after the frustration that they caused Kilmarnock at Ibrox last week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that McInnes's last words going out the dressing room would have been try and not concede early. 7 minutes gone, you're a goal down against a team like Celtic. It's going to be very hard to do anything after that. And it was very professional from Celtic. They were very impressive. I think I've said this before, but I am not a fan of plastic pitches. I'm watching that game yesterday. It wasn't great for looking at Scottish football, but Celtic were very dominant, scored some cracking goals. Maurice Yents with that overhead kick, fantastic goal. Obviously, Giakoumakis' goal, an overhead nutmeg. You can't get better than that. And I think as well, Jota, for me, probably the best player in the Premier League just now. It's a great strike. Could Walker do better in the Kilmarnock goal? Possibly. And then obviously Starfelt gets his goal as well. But Celtic were very, very dominant. Kilmarnock, I don't think there's not a lot of positives to take out that game. Only the fact they won't play Celtic again for a little time. But nah, I mean, if you're Derek McInnes, you're disappointed with some of the goals you lost. But Celtic were very, very ruthless, very, very dominant, and looked very, very good.
Yeah, I think that's going to be everybody's general feeling just now once they play Celtic, is thank God we don't need to play them for a while. And of course, for any Celtic fans tuning in to tonight's episode, let us know which overhead kick you thought was better. Was it Giakoumakis' or was it Maurice Yents' effort? And well, Graham, you picked up on Jota about probably being the best player in the Premiership. I think it's really hard to argue against that. His stunner against Aberdeen in week 1, 3 assists last week, and produces another stunner. And I think the keeper, there's no possibly. I think he probably should do better with that effort. Seeing it back again tonight before we go live on this episode. But not only did Jota grab the goal, it's the Japanese connection of Kyogo and Maeda just showing the pace and clinical nature that they both possess as well. Again, we spoke about it last Monday, but Celtic just have bags of talent and threats all over the pitch, but their attack is just on a different level to the rest of the Premiership just now, I feel.
Which is scary because it's only 3 games in.
Yeah,
and they do really look quite irresistible, and it worries me because Hearts play Celtic next week at Parkhead, and I'm fearing another absolute hammering. It's going to happen, I know it is. But Celtic going forward just looks so good. I mean, that first goal, it's actually great play by Greg Taylor because he drops it into midfield. It's a great pass for Maeda. Maeda's got the presence of mind to pick out Kyogo, and it's a very good finish. And they just look so formidable going forward. It's very hard to stop them. They've got threat from everywhere, even Matt O'Reilly. They've got a threat from everywhere. David Turnbull. They just look so good going forward. I think there has been talk that, it might be possible they might send another forward, which again just looks even more scary. Giakoumakis comes off the bench, gets his goal. They just look so ruthless just now. And it's a worry. Again, I said this on another show yesterday that for me, Celtic and Rangers are the only teams at the moment that have got 9 points out of 9. No other team in Scotland has that yet. And that's a worry for me that they're going to just get further and further ahead of everyone else. But what can you do? They just look so good at the moment.
I know, and when I was messaging in the group chat about what would the title be for today's show, or what would be the talking points, I thought, I can't say, is it going to be a 2-horse race already 3 games into the season? I think that's maybe a bit dramatic, especially when you've got the likes of yourself just sitting 2 points behind and a few other teams on 6 points as well. As Colin's put in the chat for those of you tuning in on YouTube. There appears to have been a slight delay, so apologies if you have missed the opening minutes of the show. You've missed a good gag about Rangers and penalties. And my suggestion to any Celtic fans tuning in, wanting to hear your thoughts on which overhead kick was better. Was it Georgios Chakimakis or Morris Yeds, as well as we discuss Celtic's 5-0 win over Kilmarnock and just really the abundance of attacking threats that they have. And I think for Ange this weekend, Graham, he'll be delighted that it's a clean sheet. You know, they had the problems at Ross County with the goal conceded at set piece, but to be fair to Celtic, Kilmarnock really offered very little in terms of testing that Celtic defence.
No, they didn't. I mean, I thought Lafferty might have caused a few problems, but again, Celtic dealt with them very well. You know, I think Ollie Shaw's a decent player, but up against guys like Jens and Carter Vickers, he had no service at all.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the only positive was the guy out wide for, I can't remember his name, but on the right hand side for Kilmarnock. He looked a decent player, had a lot of pace, but apart from that, he couldn't really get into the game. But Kilmarnock didn't really offer anything. And we always say that plastic pitch like Livingston and Kilmarnock could be a leveler. It wasn't yesterday because Celtic just swatted them aside. It was so easy. Mm-hmm. I don't think Kilmarnock can take much out the game yesterday. That was always going to be a hard game for them. They'll be looking to try and move on from that pretty quickly, but they just didn't offer. They didn't offer anything really yesterday.
Yeah, and I think for Derek McInnes, that will be the biggest takeaway, that they didn't offer anything. They didn't lay a glove on Celtic. I know it was often an accusation levelled at him from Aberdeen fans that he should have done better in games against Celtic in particular. And he follows that up in his first opportunity as Kilmarnock manager. But for Celtic, we've spoken about how impressive they are going forward. Where do they go from here? Do they just get better? Do they strengthen in the window? What is the next step for Celtic here?
Well, I think after the game yesterday, I think Postecoglou did say that he's looking at a couple of options. But again, they've got such a strong side. Who do you drop and who do you play? It's a hard one. They've just got so much strength and depth just now, and I think they are going to get better. I really do. And I think for me at the moment, I can't see anyone taking points off them. The hardest game they might get is Rangers, but even then, I think they're a better footballing side than Rangers. I thought maybe a couple of weeks ago that if Aberdeen could keep up their form, they might be able to take points, but then Saturday happened, so I don't know now. Hearts record in Glasgow is abysmal, so I'm expecting nothing on Sunday apart from a hammering. I just don't see who's going to take points off Celtic. They look very, very good going forward. And yeah, I think at times they are capable of giving up chances. That didn't happen yesterday because Kilmarnock were very, very poor. Mm-hmm. But I just don't see who's taking points off the Celtic team because they just look so strong.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, as I said, 5-star performance, 5 goals, and just obviously things are looking very good for the green half of Glasgow. As we said, making it 3 wins out of 3 to be one of only 2 sides on 9 points after the opening 3 rounds of games. But another side that will have been massively buoyed by the results of the weekend is, of course, Motherwell. Unfortunately for myself, as they got the bounce of a new manager, Stevie Hamill being appointed in midweek as the permanent manager. And Motherwell really did bounce back from that disappointment of the late goal that Stevie May scored last weekend to really upset the momentum that many felt Aberdeen might have generated from their 4-1 win over St Mirren to really maybe kick-start their season. But I have to be honest, I have to praise Motherwell. They outthought Aberdeen and were fully deserving of 3 points. And had it not been for that Stevie May goal at Fir Park last weekend, we could be sitting here speaking about Motherwell sitting level on points with Hearts already in this season. So maybe things aren't as bad as we both made out last week on this show for Motherwell.
Yeah, I think that was a coupon buster. I don't think many folk expected Motherwell to go on and win, let alone score 3 goals. And yeah, they were good. The first goal is a really good finish. It's a great finish, but I think it's a slip from Richardson. But you can't take away from the finish from Spittle. It's a great finish. But when Aberdeen get level, great cross for Scales, great header by my off skate, you're thinking, right, Aberdeen will go win this game now. When Johnny Hayes makes it 2-1, you're thinking, right, Aberdeen are back on track here. And the 2 goals they conceded after that to Motherwell were very, very poor goals. And I think Jim Goodwin will be disappointed with that. But it's a great victory for Stevie Hamill. I said last week that I wasn't sure him getting appointed new manager was a good thing. I think a lack of experience, but it's a great first game for him in permanent charge. But for Aberdeen, I think that might be a bit of a reality check for Jim Goodwin.
Yeah, I was recording the latest episode at lunchtime today of my own podcast, and I think one thing that, as well as, being praised for the job Motherwell did, it was, you're right, it was a bit of a reality check, a wake-up call if you want, but for me, the level of performance that Aberdeen put in was just totally unacceptable, but I think as well, it just highlights the rebuild that Jim Goodwin currently has to work with. We are going through a change, and there will be bumps in the road, absolutely. But for me, I can't accept that level of performance. But on top of that, we've picked up injuries to Matty Kennedy. Leighton Clarkson picked up an injury. Vicente Bizawan looked like he was holding his hamstring as well. So on top of the injuries, you've also got the defensive concern, because as you alluded to there, the goals, the second and third, even the first goal, Richardson does slip, but Scales can do a lot better in preventing the cross. Jim Goodwin, when he came in at Aberdeen, said fixing the defence is what he's going to be able to do. He's only kept 2 league clean sheets, so there is a lot of problems for Jim Goodwin to fix just now.
Yeah, I mean, we've praised Aberdeen so far. Obviously, the group stage of the Premier Sports Cup, they were very dominant, didn't concede a goal, they were good. Even against Celtic first game of the season, I thought they had chances, that Johnny Hayes chance, and I thought they looked decent. Last week against St Mirren, okay, St Mirren were down to 10 men, but I still thought Aberdeen played really, really well. I thought they were very good. I mean, you know more than me, why, I mean, you talked about injuries. Why do you think there was such a drop-off in performance level on that game on Saturday?
I think it's because, once again, with the injury to Hayden Coulson, we've had to move Scales back to left back, and then drop Ross McCrory out of midfield. So we lost our midfield partnership, we lost our centre-back partnership, and the team just didn't look cohesive together. There was a lack of identity and a lack of belief at times. And, the comment there from Jonathan Brown saying, surprising the Dons didn't win, especially with Motherwell being so poor. Aberdeen didn't get a chance to make Motherwell look poor. And, I think it's credit to maybe the mentality Stevie Hamill put into the squad when they went 2-1 down, that there was only one team that went at it and looked like winning. It was almost like Aberdeen thought, oh, job's done at 2-1 up. And I do actually think, the point you made there about is Goodwin under pressure. Well, given Aberdeen's away record last week, taking 3 points from your opening 3 fixtures before an away game at St Johnstone potentially does put him under pressure if we don't pick up 3 points in Perth on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to Jim Goodwin after the game, and he was very angry, and you can understand why. He talked about level performance, and the goals they conceded were very poor. I think to say he's under pressure is probably very harsh, but Aberdeen were expected better from Saturday. I think defensively they were very poor, but Motherwell, I mean, you've given them credit, and rightly so. I thought they played with more intensity than I've seen them previously. Mm-hmm. I thought, I mean, you know better than me, but Kevin Van Veen seems to have a record against Aberdeen for some reason that's crazy.
5-6 it is for the Dutchman against Aberdeen. I think he only ever scores against us. Well, that's what it feels like anyway. And to be fair to Motherwell as well, they could have had about 6 or 7 in that second half alone, let alone Van Veen's record.
Yeah, I mean, some players just have teams they like scoring against, and Van Veen just seems to be Aberdeen. Yeah. But I just think, I saw on Twitter as well, I think it was yesterday, I can't remember where I saw it, it was on Twitter somewhere, but I was laughing at the fact that somebody said that Johnny Hayes is still Aberdeen's best player, which I found quite funny.
That was Callum, who co-hosts the podcast with me, saying at 35 he's probably been our best performing player this season, which is quite telling.
Yeah, I did find that quite funny. I do like Johnny Hayes, a good player, but the fact that you've signed a lot of players and Johnny Hayes is still your best player is a bit... Whether I would agree with that, I don't know. But I just think, I mean, I've said already, I think Aberdeen will be fine this season. I think they'll be up there challenging without a doubt. But they need to react to that result on Saturday. And you said it as well, the performance, the level of performance, because I don't think anybody saw that coming.
No, and I think, if we want to be up there challenging the likes of Hearts for third place or wherever we want to be at the end of the season, we cannot afford results like that on a consistent basis. Yes, we might have that odd bump in the road that comes along, but consistently we cannot afford to be dropping points, especially at home, in my opinion. And that's why I think, whether people say it's harsh or not, I think Jim Goodwin is under pressure because he didn't get that new manager bounce that Stevie Hamill's got. We are going to come on to Motherwell in a minute. And the way last season kind of ended, that's why I feel Jim Goodwin will be under pressure if we get another couple of poor results this month, because with playing Rangers at the start of September, we had a favourable August, in my opinion. And it's great to see some comments coming in. Majowski there, he needs service. Well, he's got 4 and 4 already. It was just a shame the service lacked it in the second half. But already looking a very good player for Aberdeen. I think he'll cause a lot of teams problems this season.
Yeah, he looks very impressive. And that header's a great header. It's a great ball by Skills, but a fantastic header.
What about the miss though?
I was gonna come on to that. He actually had a chance when he was clean through, and I think he's tried to lift it over the keeper, which is fine, but he doesn't score, and that's a big moment in the game. If he scores that, it might be a different game. So I think he is a good player. I mean, I don't know what you think. How many goals do you think he's capable of scoring? Do you think he'll get between 50 and 20 this season for Aberdeen?
I'd be very surprised if he doesn't get that many.
Yeah, I mean, he does look a very, very good player. I like what I see so far. I think Ramadani looks a very good player in midfield.
Had a massive off day at the weekend, though. And that showed.
Yeah, and that's going to happen, unfortunately, in these games. But I think Aberdeen, as I say, they will be fine. They will be challenging. But Aberdeen fans, might get a bit frustrated if things don't go their way. And I think next week now becomes a really big game. St Johnstone, off the back of that result on Saturday, that's a massive, massive game for Aberdeen. They'll be looking to win that game. And I think they should be looking to win that game because Aberdeen are a far better side than they showed last season and they showed at the weekend.
Yeah, and for me, that's kind of going to be the real test for the squad, is how they react to this defeat on Saturday in Perth. But of course, we've got to praise Motherwell for the work that they did. Last Monday, I should say, when we were sitting here, we were discussing Stevie Hamill's comments about that Motherwell the team needs surgery, they need more players, they need to rebuild a squad. Now that Hamill is in place, obviously they've got that win to maybe take momentum into the season. Is it now about building on that performance result, or equally, should they now be going in and trying to identify a couple of new players, build that squad up a little bit as well?
I think a bit of both. They have to build on that. You come away from Pittodrie with a victory, you've got to have a lot of confidence on that because Aberdeen have been very good so far. I know it's early in the season, but that's a massive result, and he has to look to build on that. I am never convinced that the new manager bounce is actually a thing. Obviously, we got that on Saturday, but fair enough. But I think he has to build on that, and I think he has to strengthen. I think they'll be looking at probably 4 or 5 new players. I think they need more strength and depth up front because they've only really got Van Veen and Connor Shields. They don't have a lot else. I think they've got to try and strengthen that area. I think maybe another creative midfielder and possibly more defensively as well, because I think they did look a little bit suspect defensively on Saturday. But I think Stevie Hamill getting that win is so big for him. And if they can build on that now and win again next week, then it just builds that momentum a little bit. So you've got to give Hamill credit. It's a great victory. And as I said earlier, they played with intensity and they had bodies in the box on Saturday, which they didn't do the last week. So it's a massive result for them, but they have to build on that now.
Yeah, especially when Colin on Friday's show said that Motherwell were probably favourites for the drop. I think it just shows how surprising that result of the weekend was, and just showing, as I said, had it not been for Stevie May popping up in injury time last week, they could quite easily be level on points with Hearts. And we were last week as well, writing Motherwell off. It just shows, even though you're only 3 games into the season, just how quickly things can change in Scottish football. I was sitting here all cock a hoot about Aberdeen, and now I'm down in the dumps. So it is what we love about football, and let's see what Stevie Hamill can do for Motherwell and see if he can progress this squad more as the season commences. For the third game that we're going to look back at the weekend's action will take us to Ibrox, where Rangers cruised to a 4-0 win over the Perth Saints in St Johnstone, a game boycotted by the Fair City Unity supporters group over ticket prices. Graeme, obviously been a lot of talk about cost of living crisis and the prices that we see in Scottish football. Do you think that sort of action taken by the Fair City Unity group was a surprise, or has this been a long time coming that this sort of action is being taken?
It's a long time coming. I think Hearts fans were charged £33 for Easter last week, which is just crazy. I mean, I think St Johnstone had that slogan, 20's plenty, and I agree with that. £20 for me for going to football is more than enough. If you're paying £31 for a ticket, you've got the cost to travel, you've got the cost, if you're taking family as well, you've got the cost of the tickets, you've got the cost of travel, you've got the cost of food. if your kid wants a pie or something at the game, it's a lot of money. So I think charging £31 is just ridiculous for me. So I think they were absolutely right to do it. And I think a lot more clubs might do the same thing, to be honest.
Yeah, and also if you're being charged more than 30 quid, you want to be able to see the game. Evening Celtic, just showing that I'm not biased. I'll even it up at both sides. But this game could have been a lot different had Theo Bair taken his chance at 0-0. Maybe not expecting the ball to come back to him when he's lying on the ground, but skews his shot just wide of the post. And, I always say this when I'm previewing Aberdeen games against either Celtic or Rangers going to, especially away from home. When you get a chance at these places, you've got to be clinical and take them. And well, St Johnstone weren't half made to pay for missing a glorious opportunity like that.
I'm not sure about Theo Bair, to be honest. I've watched him a couple of times, and I think he looks more of a kind of link-up player rather than a goal scorer, and I think that showed on Saturday. Is it maybe a little bit unfortunate, but I think he's got to score. You don't get many chances at Ibrox and Celtic Park. You have to take them when you get them. Whether it would have made a difference, I don't know. Maybe Rangers would have won 4-1, you never know. But it's a huge, huge chance, and after that, to be fair to St Johnstone, for half an hour, they were fine. They were frustrating Rangers. They were getting in about them. But once that first goal goes in, it's a very difficult game after that. And Rangers, just as with Celtic, they were very professional after that.
Yeah. And I suppose for Rangers, obviously they'd been looking for something comfortable and something good for midweek. And, 4-0, 4 different goal scorers, that is the sort of ideal preparation for the big game that's coming up on tomorrow night.
Yeah, 4 goals, you can't really complain. I thought Matondo was very, very impressive. The second goal is actually made by him. It's a great challenge. And he sets it up for Kolak. And then the third goal, again, it's really good play by Rangers. I think Celtic do look better for me going forward. But Rangers have strength and depth as well. I think Tom Lawrence looks a decent player. They've obviously got Morelos back now. So going into that game tomorrow, it's a big, big victory. And I think they will have a much harder game against PSV than they had on Saturday, though. PSV are a much better team than St Johnstone, let's be honest. So it'll be a difficult game, but at home, I think Rangers will fancy that.
Yeah, and I can see some of the comments coming in over on the State of Scottish Football's YouTube where Jonathan Brown saying PSV's maybe 50-50 tomorrow. Patrick Simpson saying he fancies Rangers to beat PSV. They've got that momentum in Europe, and they definitely do seem to have that at Ibrox. Apologies to Sean Ross for Aberdeen letting your coupon down on Saturday. And let mine down as well. So you weren't the only one. But we'll maybe just touch on tomorrow's game a little bit, because obviously State of Scottish Football's not back again until Wednesday, so we've not really got any preview of the game tomorrow. Graham, what do you reckon the chances are? Do you think that kind of momentum that they do have, to quote Patrick there, especially at home, will help them? Because I'm more in agreement with Jonathan. I think this game's a lot more 50-50, and if they want to stand any chance of progressing, I think they've got to take a positive result over to Eindhoven next week.
I was going to say that. I think they need to win at home tomorrow. I think they need to take a result over there. Obviously, away goals don't matter, so if PSV score it, it's not going to matter. But I think Rangers have got to try and keep a clean sheet if they can. But PSV are a dangerous side. They've got Luke de Jong up front, who's a good player. So they have to be wary of him. And they've got pace as well out wide, so they're going to be a threat. Listen, PSV are a much better side than what Union SG were, so Rangers have to be careful. But I think at home, if I'm Rangers, I would rather the first leg is away from home, so they know what they've got to do at Ibrox. But I think tomorrow, with that crowd behind them, and with the kind of ascendancy they've got at home after the result on Saturday, if they can take a 1 or 2-0 victory away, I think they'll be delighted with that. But it's going to be a difficult game, and I think it is a 50-50. I think it will be a difficult game, but if they can take a lead over there, they'll give themselves a chance.
Yeah, I agree. I think they can't afford to be trailing going into next week anyway. But, we mentioned about players like Matondo, Kolak obviously getting on the score sheet as well. Morelos we spoke about last week, but also the midfield performances from Ryan Jack and John Lundstrom as well, impressing at the weekend. Just how important are those two players going to be tomorrow night?
I think they'll be huge. We all know what Ryan Jack does. He can be a dominant player in there. He can break the play up. He can pass the ball. He's a decent player in there. I think he'll be huge. And John Lundstrom, he's an excellent player. I really think he's a very good player. And he's got a decent strike in him as well. So I think that midfield partnership could be good. I think for me, if they had Stephen Davis in there as well, I think he'd be, with his European experience, he'd be a massive player for them. But it's just going to be such a hard game for them tomorrow. I really find it, as you say, a 50-50 game. But Lundstrom and Jack are going important. They have to break the play up. They have to get the forwards into the game. So it's going to be a difficult game for both of them. But I think they'll be up for this. And that Ibrox crowd is going to be huge, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose back to Premiership duties, if you want. Rangers obviously winning put that little bit of pressure on Celtic before they played on Sunday. Do you think we'll see if Rangers go deep in Europe? Do you think that'll? We saw last season they still managed to push Celtic. Do you think European football will affect Rangers this season more, or do you think that experience that Rangers took last season will benefit them this season?
It's a tough one. I don't think they'll go all the way in Europe. I really don't. But they have that European experience now. They know what to expect. I think both teams, Celtic and Rangers, are going to have probably about this. It's hard to say because we don't know what's going to happen with both of them. But I think it's going to be a much tougher prospect this time. For me, I still think Celtic have got a better squad than Rangers. I asked this question to somebody yesterday. Do you think Rangers have got a better squad than last season? And they said yes. I'm not quite so sure if they do.
I would disagree on that as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they do. I think Celtic look a better team at the moment. But Rangers have got quality. There's no doubt about that. And I think having Morelos back will be a huge thing for them. But domestically, I think my worry is that it's going to be a two-horse race again. That's my worry this season. And I think it will be a very tough title race this season. I think this could go right to the wire. I really do. But I just think with that Celtic squad, they just look so good going forward. And that, for me, is where Rangers, okay, they scored 4 yet on Saturday, but I just think Celtic have got that little bit more of an edge to them.
Yeah, I tend to agree on that as well. But we'll look at Saints briefly before we move on. Not a lot of positives to take from the game. Obviously, we've mentioned their win against Motherwell last week. Is it just going to kind of be a case under like Kilmarnock? You've just got to accept that anything you get from that game was going to be a bonus, and for them, it's now about getting back on track against Aberdeen this weekend coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll take heart for the fact they did have a couple of chances over that Theo Bair chance, but I don't think St Johnstone ever expected to take anything yesterday. They got that win last week, which was huge. Anything you get from Ibrox is a bonus. But as I say, for half an hour they were fine. They were competing well. But once that first goal goes in, the game's finished. Yeah. And it's a case of how many. They'll be looking to get back to winning ways next week against Aberdeen. But again, Aberdeen, after that result on Saturday, you've got both teams and they're looking to try and get a pick-me-up. So that's a very difficult game to call. But if I was a betting man, I would probably say that Aberdeen just have more than St Johnstone. So I would expect Aberdeen to win that.
Well, you obviously haven't seen us away from home a lot this season. Well, last season anyway. I definitely don't share that confidence. And do you want to put a little prediction, since we're quoting some of the people that made predictions on Friday, because one of the boys on the show on Friday did confidently predict 4-0 Rangers this weekend. Do you want to put a little prediction on tomorrow night's game?
I'm going to go. I think Rangers probably will concede, actually. But I think it'll be Rangers 2, PSV 1.
Oh, interesting. I'm going to go for the reverse of that. I do think both teams will bag tomorrow night. I know there's a lot of people in the comments saying about PSV beating Ajax a few weeks ago, which was, of course, Calvin Bassey's debut when he came on and then got himself swiftly sent off. I actually fancy PSV to take a lead to Eindhoven. I'm going to say the Dutch side will win 2-1. So we'll see next week who's got bragging rights on that one, especially if both our teams lose. At least it's got something to look forward to.
That's true.
The fourth game from the Premiership we're going to look at this week is the Livingston game against Hibernian, where the Edinburgh side succumbed to the West Lothian side. It's their fourth loss in 8 months to Livingston, each game having 4 different managers for the away side. Quite remarkable stat, that, and just shows the changes that Hibs have been going through in recent months.
That's a great stat. I love that. Can you repeat that? Sorry,
yeah,
if you're watching.
So just any Hearts fans and Hibs fans, that is Hibs' 4th loss in 8 months to Livingston, 4th consecutive loss as well, under 4 different managers in the time.
I love that Livingston pitch. I've always said that's a great pitch. No, I mean, I think, to be fair, it was a game of 2 halves. Livingston dominated the first half. Second half, Hibs were the far better team. probably thought they were going to win the game after they got back to 1-1, but, Abdullahi scores that goal. But that first half, Joe Newbley just ragdolled Poaches and Hanlon something rotten. He was so good. I've been really impressed with Newbley. I think the step up from Arbroath, he's been excellent. But if I'm Lee Johnson, that first goal is an absolute shambles. Paul Hanlon's defending for that first goal is horrific. I don't know what he's trying to do with that. And John Newbley just walks us through. It's a great finish. And then Livingston had chances after that to probably kill the game off. But credit to Hibs, second half, they were far, far better. I think they get the goal back from Kenneth, a bit of a deflected goal. But after that, Hibs probably should have won the game. They had plenty of chances. They looked a threat going forward. Martin Boyle obviously was a massive threat. And you're thinking, Hibs are either going to win the game or it's going to be out for a draw. Livingston get the goal, and it's pretty much game over. And if you're David Martindale, you're delighted with that. But if you're Lee Johnson, you've got to be very worried about how poorly you defended both those goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously the first goal you've said is really poor from a Hibs point of view, but absolutely fantastic from a Livingston point of view. A brilliant solo effort from Newbley, who continues his fine start to the season. Obviously, that's his back-to-back goals in home games as well. Impressive against Rangers. And, even did catch the attention of the Sports Sound guys. Alan Preston maybe suggesting that Hearts, could be tempted to maybe try and bid for him and steal him from Livingston before the transfer window. But do you think there's any other teams maybe eyeing that sort of performances he's putting in and thinking, we've got 2 weeks before the end of the transfer window. Would there be teams in Scotland, you think, that could benefit from having Newbley in their side? Apologies to any Livingston fans tuning into this episode.
100%. I mean, Newbley couldn't be any worse than Uche Piazzi was for Hearts. So I would quite happily take him. I think he's been a real threat. He's a real handful. He's got pace. He's got power. He's got everything you want as a striker. And that finish, he does so well to finish that. It's a great goal. And I think you saw against Rangers, he caused them problems. He's going to cause problems to every team in Scotland. Would they get into Celtic Rangers team? Probably not. But I think every other team in Scotland, they would 100%. He's a very, very good player. And I wouldn't be surprised if somebody does come in for him at the end of the window.
Mm-hmm.
I would love Hearts to take him. Once we lost Ellis Sims, we lost that bit of physical presence up front. And I think Newbley would be a great foil for Shankland. Whether he would do it or not, I don't know. But I think he would be a great signing for anybody in this league.
Yeah, absolutely. I would take him at Aberdeen if we lost Christian Ramirez before the end of the window as well. And from a Hibs point of view, we spoke last week about the quality or maybe lack of quality that Hibs possess in the final third. And I really feel that was evident once again this weekend. The goal that they do get in this game is a very scrappy equaliser. But again, in that final third, there's yet more frustration. And I suppose maybe the biggest surprise for Hibs fans this weekend was the fact that Martin Boyle found himself on the bench up until half-time. Were you surprised not to see Martin Boyle named in the starting 11?
I was a little bit, but his fitness clearly isn't quite up to scratch yet. Maybe he can't last a full game, but I would have thought start him and then take him off after an hour or something. Mm-hmm. But I was very surprised, and I think going forward, Hibs look okay in certain spells in the game on Saturday, but you're right, they really don't have that clinical finish up front. I think they really miss Kevin Nisbet.
Mm-hmm.
I think Christian Deutsch is decent, but I think they really lack a natural finisher, like a Lawrence Shankland, for example. But I think Ellie Ewan looks decent, but again, he doesn't look a natural striker. Melkison, for me, I haven't seen anything off him that really impresses me so far. I think he's decent movement, but he doesn't score goals, and that's a massive worry. So I think if I'm Lee Johnson, I'm looking to strengthen that before the window closes. I think they really lack somebody up front that can take chances away, because on the second half, they had chances that can put them away. If they had a natural finisher, they could have walked out West Lothian with 3 points, but there you go, they don't.
Yeah, and I have to say that the Livingston keeper that they've brought in on loan looks a very good keeper, and looks to maybe going to earn them a few points that they might not have got at this point last season.
Yeah, definitely. He looks very, very good. I think we said before, David Martindale's a good coach. I think Livingston are very underrated. I think they will have a good season this season. Whether they finish top 6, I don't know. But I think he'll probably look to add 2 or 3 more players to that. And like you said, if they were to lose Joe Newbley at the end of the window, it would be a huge loss. They've only got Bruce Anderson after that. They need to strengthen that area, but I think they'll be fine. I think they'll have a good season, but top 6, I'm not sure about yet.
Yeah, it depends on what Hibs and Aberdeen do for the rest of the season as well, I'm sure. But, Hibs as well, they defended the first goal pretty poorly. As you said, Paul Hanlon not exactly covering himself in glory. I know Christian Doidge isn't a defender, but when you're coming up against Livingston, and again, with the greatest of respect to Livingston, they're really a set-piece team. That's where Livingston will hurt you, is at set pieces. Christian Doidge just totally switches off, and Obalai gets a free header. A brilliantly worked set piece from a Livingston point of view, but once again, Lee Johnson must be tearing his hair out, thinking we're conceding another soft goal here.
Yeah, you're bang on. You know what Livingston are going to do. They're going to get the ball in the box. They've got a real threat in the air. And it is poor defending for Doidge. He's obviously meant to pick up Obalai. He loses him. And with 5 minutes to go, you switch off and you lose that goal. The goals they're conceding are very, very poor. Look at the goal they lost last week. Yes, it's a great ball by Barry Mackay, but it's poor defending again from Hibs. And I think that's got to be a worry for Johnson. They're not defending well enough at the moment. And they're not giving themselves a base to start with. If you're losing goals, you're going to have problems. So they have to get that sorted. But I keep on saying this. Ryan Poaches, for me, is not a good defender. I will keep on saying this, and I will argue with anyone that says he is. He switches off. His lack of awareness is poor. And again, on Saturday, was done a couple of times by Nubly. So I think they have to work on defending. And they've got to get the balance right between defending and attacking, because they're not, for me, scoring enough goals. And they play Rangers next week at Easter Road. That's a huge game for Lee Johnson. If he loses that and loses that comfortably, I think a lot of Hibs fans will start asking questions already.
Yeah, and I suppose when you've not got that quality or clinical nature at the top of the pitch that Hibs are kind of missing in the recent weeks, you can't afford to gift opposition cheap goals. As you said, you're not giving yourself any sort of platform to build in a game. And I did actually have that in the notes to ask you, because, people put in the comments about Jim Goodwin maybe being under pressure on the back of a poor Premier Sports Cup group stage campaign and a pretty indifferent start to the league. Is Lee Johnson potentially under pressure just 3 and a bit games into the season, as you said, if there is a bad result coming next weekend?
See, folk think I'm biased because I'm a Hearts fan, but genuinely, I think he could be under pressure. They beat St Johnstone 1-0 narrowly. Did they deserve to win the game? Possibly, but it's a last-minute winner. They then play Hearts, and they're 30 seconds away from a defeat until Martin Boyle comes on, and then they lose against Livingston. So the pressure does start to mount, and if they get hammered by Rangers, I don't know if that'll happen, but if they get hammered by Rangers, questions will be asked. And I think Johnson at the moment is under slight pressure. A lot of these new signings still haven't quite gelled in yet. I think they will. I do think they'll have a decent season, but if they were to get hammered next week, there will be a lot of questions asked about Lee Johnson. Is that unfair? Yes, I think it probably is. But they will get asked anyway if they get hammered next week.
Yeah, just quite remarkable the difference a couple of late goals has made to Hibs' season. And had they not got either of those late goals against St Johnstone or Hearts, we could be speaking about him genuinely being under pressure based on that. But we've spoken about Hibs. We do have to praise Livingston because they had the game last weekend against Dundee United on Sunday. Maybe not took advantage of the European hangover, but you've still got to be able to take advantage and play the opposition that's put in front of you. They did that job professionally last Sunday at Tannadice. And we said they then had to go and back that up. It was a tough ask against Hibs. Well, have we maybe looked at the head-to-head, 4 wins in a row now against Hibs? That is almost the perfect tonic to backing that win at Tannadice up. And now they find themselves again, I know we're speaking only 3 games into the season, but they find themselves currently in the top 6. It is a good platform for Livingston to build. Maybe if there is any Livingston fans tuning in, survival will always be the main aim every season, I'm sure, with the view to trying and breaking in that top 6. But they are going about their business quietly and effectively at this early part of the season.
Yeah, you know what Livingston are like. They're very hard to beat, especially at Livingston. They're a tough team to crack. David Martindale sets them up very well. They're well organised. They're well drilled. Everyone knows their jobs, and they all work for each other. They all fight for each other, and that's what you want. David Martindale, every season when he's asked about what their aspirations are, he always says to stay in the league, and they always do. Yeah. I never really think Livingston are going to be in trouble. I never think they're going to get relegated because they're a decent side. And I think they are very hard to beat. And that result on Saturday is huge. But again, like what Motherwell on Saturday, they now have to build on that. They've got to keep building on that. And I think with Joel Nubler there, if they can keep him fit and more importantly, they can keep him after the window, then I think they'll be a very good side this season. They're not great on the eye, but they're a very hard team to beat.
Yeah, but I suppose it doesn't matter if it's not pretty for them. It's about getting the results, and right now that is what they're doing. And I do agree. I think they'll be fine this season. They'll have enough about them, and they pick up these results that people don't expect them to pick up. Fans of Hibs won't have expected them to lose. Fans of Dundee United won't have expected them to lose to Livingston. Again, with the greatest respect. So they go about their business quietly and effectively, as I said, and yeah, they've done a good job to start the season. Another team that have gone about their business well at the start of the season and remain unbeaten is, of course, your own beloved Heart Midlothian. A very comprehensive win over a very beleaguered Dundee United on the back of course, that 7-0 thrashing by AZ. Probably Tynecastle, one of the venues you don't want to go on the back of a heavy European defeat, especially when Hearts are gearing up for that game against Zurich on Thursday night. Graeme, do you want to lead on how impressive Hearts were for you?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I put on Twitter a couple of days ago that we need to be wary of a wounded United, and after 41 seconds, Lauren Shanklin puts that to bed. It's a great ball by Cammy Devlin, a great finish, and to be fair, Robbie summed that up well. The first minute we got the goal, and then for the next 44, we didn't really do a lot. We didn't really look under any real threat. Second half were a lot better. Barry Mackay scores a great second goal. I think there'll be questions after Mark Brigitte in the United goal. He's not had a great last few days, to be fair. But it's a great finish by Barry Mackay, who's just an absolutely fantastic player just now on top of his game. The third goal, again, Mark Brigitte's got to take the blame. It's a good strike from Michael Smith, but he can only palm it to George Grant, who finishes. Stephen Fletcher gets the goal from United. For me, if we've got VAR, that's not a penalty because Gary Mackay-Steven gets the ball. But then again, if we've got VAR, Josh Ginnelly doesn't get the fourth goal because he is slightly offside. But, I mean, for Hearts, it's a great victory. I wonder what we will get after that United game on Thursday. I wonder if Hearts will be up for this. Looking forward to Thursday. And yeah, it's a very professional job again. It's a great victory. We should be looking at 9 points if we could have held out last week. But I'm very, very pleased the way things are going just now. I know that Robbie is looking to still get another 3 players in, which I think we need because we need a bigger squad with these European games coming up. But I'm delighted with that. I'm delighted with the way we're playing just now. I'm delighted with Lauren Shanklin too. I'm very impressed with so far. His work rate is better than I thought. And it's a great victory. Yes, United were not great, but Hearts can only beat what's put in front of them, so I'm delighted with that.
Yeah, and I think, the expectation levels that was probably put on Hearts this season by the rest of Scottish football, let alone the Jam Tart faithful after last season, I think they're living up to that expectation so far. The real test will be, the next couple of weeks, how Hearts deal with that games on the Thursday night and then going into the Premiership games on the Sunday. So Barry Mackay's been very impressive for Hearts this season. There's been a few clamours on social media over the weekend about whether or not he could earn himself a Scotland call-up for the Nations League games coming up in September. Is it too early to tout Barry for Scotland, given that the games are still a month away? Or do you think, based on what you're seeing so far, it's fully justified, these calls?
I am flying the flag for Barry Mackay for Scotland. The boy is immense. I mean, honestly, I'm so impressed with him. Last season, he was great, but it took him ages to score. And already this season, he's got 2 goals and a few assists as well. He's just a fantastic player. We talk about Jota. He is a brilliant, brilliant player. But for me, I think Barry Mackay is the best player outside of the old Celtic and Rangers. I really do. He's just a brilliant player. He's creative. He can score goals. He's just somebody that I love watching. I pay money to watch him. He's a brilliant player. So, yes, I am flying the Barry Mackay for Scotland flag. And if he's not in the next Scotland squad, I am going to be raging.
I should have probably asked someone a bit more impartial than yourself on that one. But you're right. Around Dundee United, obviously, a really disastrous night. I think Patrick Simpson in the comments saying that result will maybe define United's season. But there is genuine question marks around Birighitti because not only did he have a really bad night on Thursday, I was very less than impressed with some of his goalkeeping, especially the goalkeeping for Grant's third goal. United fans must be pulling their hair out.
They will be, and I think so will Jack Ross, to be honest, because you can't legislate for a goalkeeper making such poor mistakes. I know there's been a lot of stuff about maybe Xander Clark going to United. I don't know if that would ever happen, but I mean, what would that say about Mark Brigitte if another goalkeeper and think, oh well, I'm not good enough then? Yeah. But it is very harsh. But he doesn't, for me, fill me with a lot of confidence. I mean, even on Thursday, there wasn't a lot he could do about a few of the goals, but the third goal when he comes out for the corner and misses it completely, he looks like he's short of confidence, and that United side looks like a short of confidence. I think if you're Jack Ross yesterday, you're going at that game thinking, right, let's just try and keep it tight early on, try and frustrate this Hearts crowd, and just try and get ourselves in the game. 41 seconds, you can't legislate for that. It's poor defending. You know, United switch off, and Cammy Devlin, who's a defensive midfielder, is in the box setting up Shankland. That can't happen. You know, United switched off, and it's poor. It really is poor. The goals that they're losing are shambolic, and there's not a lot Jack Ross can do about that. They've now lost, 11 goals in the last couple of games? It's so poor. I think it is very harsh to say that Jack Ross is under pressure because it's still too early in the season. But that AZ result has just set the cat amongst the pigeons. If you're gonna lose against AZ, if you lose like 2-0, 3-0, then folks say, okay, we've at least competed. Yeah. But to lose by 7, that's the massive failure. And that game yesterday is so poor.
Yeah, and I think that's why it will be defining, because it's the manner and the capitulation in that game. And it very much seemed that, United did similar at Tynecastle on Sunday. And now, on the back of losing to Livingston pre-AZ, they now face a game against St Mirren, buoyed by their victory at the weekend, which of course we'll come on to shortly. We're speaking about managers maybe relieving pressure on themselves this weekend, but certain managers, based on results, are possibly putting themselves into pressure at this early stage, because I think when the league is so tight, we see the reward that the likes of Hearts have got guaranteed European group stage football this season, the reward that is there for finishing higher up the league, the potential for that income that Europe provides, unless you don't make a fool of yourselves, Motherwell and Dundee United. There is determination from the rest of Scottish football to capitalise on that, and fans won't accept a string of poor results.
Yeah, you're right. I might be slightly controversial here, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think Jack Ross is a good manager, but I think United are really suffering from losing Thomas Courts. I think Thomas Courts was such a good fit for United. He had them playing some good football. They finished 4th in the league. They had a very good season, and I don't think United have kind of got over the blow of losing Thomas Courts when they did. And I think that's played a massive part in this. I think Jack Ross will do fine, but I'm not convinced that result on Thursday happens if Thomas Coates is still there. I just think Jack Ross he's got a lot of work to do. I think he has signed well. I think getting Dylan Levitt there is a good signing. I think bringing Stephen Fletcher in is a real coup. I think Middleton's a good player. And I think he will get it right. But you cannot get hammered like that on Thursday and again yesterday. And that game next week now becomes crucial. But I honestly believe that losing Thomas Courts is a bigger blow than I think a lot of folk expected it to be.
I think the bigger blow is replacing with Jack Ross, because I'm going to disagree. I don't think he is as good a manager as many people make out. And there's another one to see who becomes right over the course of the season. We've got one short-term prediction and one long-term, so we'll see what comes. One long-term prediction I mentioned to you guys in the group chat was around Lawrence Shankland. I thought he'd be a big flop at Hearts. Just didn't think he would be good enough for the Premiership, purely based, I know, maybe falsely on his time at Dundee United, but also in his brief appearances at Aberdeen. But Graeme, you must be delighted at the way he's kicked off his Hearts career, and hoping that he continues this fine form he finds himself in at the moment in time.
When I saw Lawrence Shankland scoring last week and I saw him scoring on Sunday, my immediate thought was, I really hope Glenn is watching this now behind the couch. I just think Shankland's a very, very good player. I really do. I know he's had a lot of criticism. People say he's a championship striker. I think that's nonsense, to be honest. I think if he gets the service and he's played where he should be up front, I think he's a penalty box striker, and that is showing. But what I'm really impressed with is his work rate off the ball. I think he's a lot stronger than I gave him credit for. His link-up play is excellent. And even the first goal yesterday, it's actually great movement from him. He starts outside the box, and as soon as Devlin gets that ball, he's in the box across that front post. His movement's brilliant, and I'm very impressed with him. If he can keep getting the service that he's getting, another prediction that might not go very well, but I'm going to say that I think Shankland will get at least 20 goals this season if he keeps getting that service. Watch him now get injured and never play again, but that's my prediction for the season.
Well, let's see who gets here first, Shankland or Bojan Miovski. That'll be the one to watch out for. And that could be the difference between a third place finish for both these teams.
Yeah, I think my only concern, and you've mentioned this as well, I think my only concern about Hearts is European games. Playing Thursday, Sunday is going to be tough. Do we have the squad to get third place? I think we do if we didn't have the European games, and that's where I think Ruben needs to strengthen a bit further. But it will be an interesting race. I think Hearts, Aberdeen, potentially Hibs could all be up there. It will be interesting, but I think for me, having Lawrence Shankland is the signing that I wanted. We needed that penalty box striker. We've got it now. So, yeah, I think he's going to have a good season. And I think if we can keep everybody fit, Barry Mackay, Liam Boyce, Lawrence Shankland, Alan Forrest, we've got a very, very good squad there. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens this season. I really do.
Yeah, well, we'll certainly keep an eye on that one. The last but not least, the game to look back on from the weekend was the basement clash between St Mirren and Ross County. Both sides going into this fixture looking to pick up their first points of the season, and it was the Paisley outfit that did so in quite spectacular fashion with a Richard Tate thunderbolt. I say thunderbolt, but he more caressed the ball into the top corner, didn't he, Graeme? A really goal that was worthy of winning any game.
That's a great strike. I think if a lot of folks said, who's going to do that? You wouldn't have thought Richard Tate, but it's a great finish, to be fair. Fantastic goal. And there's not much you can do about that when you're Ross County. But that's a huge win for Robertson. He needed that. Again, another manager that's been under pressure. Maybe a little bit harsh at the moment, but listen, it's a great result. And they now, like I said about a few teams, they have to build on that now. But it's a huge 3 points. And there's been quite a few decent goals this weekend, to be fair. And that's right up there.
Yeah, that is. I would probably say that's better than Jota's, because I think the keeper should do better for Jota's as well. So there's a controversial opinion for you there. And just how much pressure do you think has been lifted off Stephen Robinson's shoulders based on that result? Given the likes of, Motherwell won with the greatest respect, because Aberdeen are being dragged down there. Livingston winning as well. Maybe teams that St Mirren think they would probably be competing with over the course of the season are picking up points in games that people probably weren't expecting them to this weekend. So that does become a vital point. 3 points for Stephen Robinson based on the pressure he's getting off the fans, but also, elsewhere when results are maybe going unexpectedly.
Yeah, you can see the relief of Robertson on Saturday after the game. He needed that. They had a really poor Premier Sports Cup group. I think against Motherwell, the first game, they were unlucky. They probably should have won that game.
Yeah.
Last week against Aberdeen, you get Declan Gallagher sent off, and then they get hammered. So you're thinking, how do they react to that? And maybe not having Declan Gallagher was a massive help on Saturday, getting suspended. Yeah. But no, it's a huge result. He needed that. It does lift a little bit of pressure, but they have to build on that now next week. It's going to be hard, but they needed that win. And I think the biggest thing for Robinson is they've kept a clean sheet. That'll be a huge bonus for them. Ross County had a few opportunities, but nothing major. So it's a big win for St Mirren. I still think they will be in trouble this season. I really do. I still don't see them getting top six. I think they'll be in relegation trouble. But that's a huge 3 points for them and a huge 3 points for Robertson as well.
Yeah, and apart from, I think Owura Edwards hit the post and Trevor Carson made a really good save towards the end of the game. Once again, Ross County maybe have bright spells in the game, but come away 3 games in with nothing to show but praise for looking good. Unfortunately, looking good doesn't get you any points. Stephen Robinson's relieved some pressure on himself. Has Malky Mackay going to come in for some pressure now, being the fact that Ross County are now the only team in the Premiership without a point on the board?
I watched them against Hearts first game and I thought they were brilliant. I thought they deserved to get something out of the game, but they lost. I watched them last week against Celtic and they had moments in the game, but again, they lost. And then on Saturday, they play again some decent stuff, but they don't score.
Mm-hmm.
It must be frustrating for Malky Mackay, but I think they're playing some decent stuff. I think they've got quality up front in Edwards. I think he looks a good player.
Yeah.
But again, as with Hibs, I think they just lack that clinical player up front that can take these chances.
Yeah.
I think the longer it goes without him picking up 3 points, I think he will be under pressure. But I think at the moment, I think performances are fine, but they need to start picking up 3 points. And I think that'll be a frustration. I think they are, to be sitting there with no points out of 9 is going to be a massive blow for him. But I think you'll see signs there that they are doing okay, but they've got to start scoring goals, and that's got to be a major frustration for them so far.
Yeah, and I think the thing as well is last season, if I'm right in saying, it took County 10 or 11 games to pick up certainly their first win of the season, but I think, they had the odd draw. So it took them a while to get going last season. So maybe they are just the proverbial slow starters, but with the fact that there is a 3-point gap already, they are in danger of needing to pick up something and pick up something quick.
It's amazing just how vital Reagan, Charles Cook and Joseph Hungwell were for them last season, because they were scoring the goals for them. They don't really have that. They don't really have that now this season. They've got players out wide that can cause problems and get balls in the box, but they don't have that natural finisher. And I think that's somewhere that they've got to strengthen. And again, you maybe looking defensively as well, looking at the goals they're conceding. Listen, there's not a lot you can do about Richard Tate put one in the top corner. It's a great goal. But they've got to strengthen that as well. So there are areas they can strengthen, but I don't think at the moment they'll be too concerned. Obviously, if this goes on further, then they will get concerned. But I think there has been signs in all 3 games so far that they have a decent side there, but they've got to strengthen that forward area. And if they do that, they'll be fine. But they've got to get that first win and get it quickly.
Yeah, and I think that kind of highlights a point you made about the quality at the top end of the pitch, because in a game as tight as that, and okay, it was a moment of quality, it's coming from a St Mirren defender, but in those tight games, you need to have something at the top end of the pitch. We've said this about Hibs as well. You need to have someone there that can take chances, because you can't afford that a moment of brilliance or a moment of luck for the opposition, you end up coming away with nothing. You want to be able to have something that can drag you back into a game or turn these tight affairs from 1 point into 3. So I'm sure between now and the end of the window, Malky's definitely going to be looking probably back down to his contacts down south to get a few more wonder loan deals that he seems to pull off.
Yeah, I think so. And I think as well, the first 2 games, they've not scored first. And I think at least if you score first, as I said with Hibs and that, you've got a base to build on. They've not had that yet. They're falling behind in every game when you're playing catch-up. So that is really difficult. They have to try and find a way to stop conceding and get even just a 1-0 win for somewhere and maybe try and build on that. But they have to get goals for somewhere because they're not scoring enough. They're looking decent going forward, but they just don't have that clinical edge up front that you really need. I mean, a team like St Johnstone, I mean, your aim probably is it going to be finishing top 6? I'm not sure, but their aim has to be not to get relegated. But they've got to find a goal scorer for somewhere because they just don't score enough goals at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose for St Mirren now, Stephen Robinson's going to be hoping for a bit more consistency, whether or not Declan Gallagher gets back into the team, as you said. Ironic given that's their first clean sheet of the Premiership season this weekend. And I do agree, very unlucky not to take anything from that Motherwell game, a real Liam Kelly-inspired display, preventing St Mirren taking anything from that. Obviously, atrocious against Aberdeen, and then, picking up a huge 3 points. That game coming up at Tannadice at the weekend, huge for Dundee United for one reason, and absolutely huge for St Mirren on the other. If they can go and build on that, let's see where St Mirren go from being under pressure to looking up the table.
I think it's a bigger game for United, just based on the last couple of games and the hammerings they've got. I think they need to get a result there. But St Mirren will be on a high now. That win on Saturday, the goal from Richard Tate, he'll be on a high. So it's a huge game for both of them. And I think if St Mirren win that game, then Stephen Robinson can think, right, I've built something here. Mm-hmm. If Jack Ross loses that game, I think United fans will maybe start to turn him a little bit, which might be a little bit too early, but it's a huge game for both of them. And I think, if the lads are on a Friday, they'll talk about that game. But I think that is probably one of the huge games already this early in the season for both teams, but it's a big game for United.
Yeah, I actually think on Red Tinted Glasses we called the Aberdeen St Johnstone game a 6-pointer already. So, but it just shows that early on in the season, with managers under pressure, fans frustrated, it shows how quick pressure builds and games carry a huge amount of importance. And I look forward to catching up with you next Monday, Graeme, to discuss what I'm sure will be another eventful weekend of Scottish football. Thank you to everyone that has tuned in tonight's episode, interacted with the show, liked the show, subscribed over on State of Mind YouTube channel. Of course, that is, remember, free to do so. Let's see, Graeme, what this week in Scottish football brings us. And let's see what next weekend brings as well, as we will be back. Well, both of us, anyway, will be back on Monday to look back at another weekend of Scottish football. State of Scottish Football will be back live on Wednesday and Friday this week. So remember to get those notifications on to stay up to date with all the latest news across Scottish football.